Yeah, Max Johnson, originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. I was born April the 2nd, 1929, so I'm 86 in 6 days.
Yay! You just had
I
a
did it.
birthday.
Yeah. Just recently.
Happy late birthday.
Thank you. I spent the first roughly 20 years of my life in Shreveport, well, up until I went off to college. I was about 17 years, then I was in school for 4. And through the ROTC program,
Where did you go to school at? In
LSU.
LSU?
In Shreveport, it was Fair Park High. One of 2 high schools at the time that we had. And then through Boys State, I got a scholarship to LSU, so that's why I went there.
Fancy.
Yeah,
Fancy.
it helped.
What were you going to school for?
Mechanical engineering. And I did that somewhat like kids of that day. You don't know what you're going to do. And my dad worked for the glass plant in Shreveport, Libby Owens Ford. And the manager of that plant saw me at the gate of the plant frequently because I sold magazines for Curtis Publishing Company, making my spending money. And he said if I would go ahead to school and get me a degree in mechanical engineering, that he had a job for me in the plant. And then his plant engineer said the same thing, that he would back it up and make sure that I had a job. So that's why I took it. I knew anything else about engineering at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as frequently happens, the plant manager died when I was a first semester sophomore. The plant engineer died when I was a second semester junior. So the promise of a job when I got out of school disappeared before I got my degree. But as it relates to the Korean War, I really got started into that through the ROTC program. I'm one of 6 children,
Youngest?
4 boys.
Your youngest or oldest or middle?
I'm the middle. I'm the 4th, actually.
Oh, wow.
And
brothers or sisters? Brothers or sisters?
Have an older brother, 2 older sisters, and 2 younger brothers.
Oh, wow. Big family.
Yeah. And when you're working as a shift worker at a glass plant and you have 6 kids, and when you go to school and they tell you that if you take ROTC, they furnish the uniforms and you must wear them 3 days a week. So that cuts down on the clothing bill about 60%. So all of the boys took ROTC.
Really?
When I went to LSU, they required 2 years of ROTC. And so I was going to enroll in that same reason. They furnished the uniforms, you had to wear them 2 days a week. So it was an expense help. And then when I got down there as a freshman, this was in the day when they shaved all the freshmen's heads. And I reported for ROTC as a shaved head freshman and looked at the roster and found that I was a buck sergeant and everybody in my squad was a sophomore. And they looked at me like, this isn't right. We have a freshman and he's our squad leader. So I went to the head of the ROTC and said, I'm not complaining, I just would like to understand why I'm a freshman, I'm a squad leader, and I got a squad of sophomores. And he looked at the sheet and said, well, didn't you go to high school, ROTC? And I said, yeah. He said, as far as we're concerned, you're a 3-year experience. So you skipped the first year, and you're now a sophomore. And so that allowed me to go into advanced ROTC as a sophomore. That was 2 years. Same uniform deal, but this time they paid you $20 a month, which helped. In November, I got the orders to report. I actually was in reserves. We were going to go to Europe, which I was looking forward to that. I thought it'd be great. And the commanding general of our unit said, let me make sure that you're going to be available. So he wrote the 4th Army and asked them to confirm my availability to go to Europe with them. And I think that just told them where I was, because the next thing I know, I got my orders to report to Camp Rucker, Alabama, which is a fun kind of a deal because the orders said report on the 27th of November. No, 24th of November, I'm sorry. but they weren't mailed until the 27th. I didn't get them until the 29th.
Of November.
Yeah, so I'm a week AWOL when I got the orders. Plus, they were in winter uniforms. All our reserve unit had was summer uniforms. So I rushed around and told the people I couldn't come back to work anymore. I had to leave. Told my mother I was going to have to leave.
You
And
barely
then
you barely had time for a goodbye or anything. It was.
and I knew I had to find out where I was going because Camp Rucker is not on the map.
Mm-hmm.
My reserve unit didn't know where it was. The ROTC didn't know where it was. I couldn't find anybody who knew where the place was. So I finally went to the train station and I said, look, I've got orders to be at Camp Rucker, Alabama, and I can't find the place. And he looked and said, I can't either. And then he went down under his desk and came out with a moldy looking book about that high from World War II and said, well, Camp Rucker is a World War II temporary camp that has been closed ever since. But it is located between Enterprise and, what was the other? Two little towns in Alabama anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I caught a train, went to Montgomery, Alabama, caught a bus, went down to Camp Rucker and reported in, but without even a uniform. So.
Were you in any trouble?
Well, it was kind of funny. Back in those days, the only way you could make copies was mimeograph machines.
Mm-hmm.
And when I reported in, the major that I reported to started screaming when he heard me tell the orderly my name. And he said, you should have been here a week ago. I said, well, that's part of my problem. So I told him what happened, and I had that envelope and the orders, you know, the day it was mailed and the day I got it and so forth. And so he wanted to take that, and I said, no, sir, that stays with me. Because that's the only thing I have to prove that I was not AWOL. I just didn't know where I was supposed to be going.
Yeah.
So it took from November to February to finally get my date of going on active duty officially caught up. But that's where I was in Rucker. It's now Fort Rucker. They've made it a permanent place, and that's where all the helicopter training is going on. At that time, we found out we were going to be used to reopen the camp. And I didn't know that you used coal in the South for heat until I got over there. But they had been burning coal in pot-bellied stoves to keep the pipes from freezing. And we had about an eighth of an inch of black coal dust in every barracks. And so that was our job, was trying to clean it. We had, as I told the group that we went out the first time, we had more cow patties in Fort Rucker than we had men. Because for all that time they just let the cows run. But we were there for until January, and then typical Army stuff. They sent us to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and replaced us with the Wisconsin-Minnesota National Guard. We were 59 degrees, all of it. This was the southern camp. We were used to the heat. No, we were not used to the cold.
And by this time, what time of the month is it? Or what month is it?
We moved up in January.
So this is January of
51.
51, okay. Just making sure I'm following.
Yeah. We left, we had to take a troop train up, and we left Alabama at 59 degrees. We got off the troop train in Wisconsin. It was 23 below. 6 days later, it was 54 below. Not wind chill, just 54 below. The warmest day we had for 2 weeks was minus 16. But our colonel called me on the train as we were bringing the men in and said, I want you to start conditioning hikes in the morning because it was cold in Korea and this was what they thought they were getting us ready for. So we had to go out without earmuffs, without the inserts in the gloves, without the snowpack shoes and all this kind of stuff. We had 29 frostbitten ears, 4 frozen feet, 6 frozen noses. It was cold. They would not let us call off basic training unless it was colder than 15 below. As long as it was 15 below or above, we had to go ahead and do the training. And just so you know how that works, we set up a combat problem with one troop digging in on the hill and two troops attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the guys that were digging in, I said, dig your foxholes until you can comfortably lean over with your rifle to fire out of the foxhole. And we'd done that for about 30 minutes, and I hear this guy holler, and then I went over and I said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "Sir, you told me to dig down until I could just lean over." He said, "I'm down there, but I haven't found any dirt yet." It was deep snow.
Oh my
and
gosh.
when they ran problems, you send scouts out,
Mm-hmm.
and we had them alternate. One would run, and the next one would wait, and then he would pass that, and they'd leapfrog. And one of them leapfrogged, and he looked back to motion the other guy forward, and he couldn't find him. So he ran back, and there was about 8 inches of his rifle sticking above the snow. He had run across a creek bed where it was soft snow, and when he dropped down in there, it was deep enough that if he stuck his rifle up over his head like this, he could only get about 8 inches of it. And if we hadn't had other guys out there to get in there in a hurry, he would have drowned.
What?
Which is what happens in cattle in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
If they run into a fence and it's blowing snow, they can't keep going. They put their tail to the wind and keep going, and they'll turn sideways, and if they breathe that stuff, they drown. The tallest thing in the town was a piece of metal about 8 foot high that was just sticking up there. The rest of it had been leveled.
What had it used to be? Was it a building prior? Or?
Yeah, this was a small city,
Mm-hmm.
but it's demolished. And then the other thing that you do get impressed with is the conditions those people had to live under. I mean, it's awful. When we would convoy from one place to another, we would stop periodically and let the guys get out and walk around, limber up their legs. And you wouldn't see anybody. And then when you stopped, and we always had some kind of ration so the guys would be eating, and within just no time at all, there may be 50 kids popping up out of the grass and coming around there, all of them looking for something to eat, because they were orphans, and they were literally living out in the grass, just pulling the stuff around and making it to where they could have a kind of a warm place to stay in. So that, that's the thing that really bothers you. A lot of orphanages were set up, and I grew up a Baptist in Louisiana, where the top half of Louisiana is redneck Baptist, the bottom half of it's Catholics, and we kind of had that divide. But I learned to really respect the Catholic people over there because they had priests. One guy I met was from Ireland, Roman Catholic priest from Ireland. He'd been there 30 years. He'd been home twice. And he wouldn't go anywhere else. He was going to help those people rebuild the town of Hoingsong, where this piece of metal was. Mm-hmm. And they're really some dedicated folks that work with them. But
so tell me a little bit more about your responsibility. What did you have to do while you were in Korea?
Most of my time was spent as a motor officer, is what they called us. And I had all the equipment to keep up, to make sure that we could pave runways, build taxiways. And it's interesting in a way because, for example, we built one at Wonju, and we needed to pack it down because we had F-51 fighters going to be flying, and these jockeys are kind of rough on the runways. So one of our enlisted men said, "We don't have enough equipment to pack this down and get it done on time. So what I'm going to do is go down here on the road and put up a detour sign and make all the traffic go right down the middle of our runway." And that's what he did for 2 days. He packed that thing down, made a really good runway out of it. But it was because he just diverted the traffic and then put them back on as they got past. And then the other thing we encountered in building, because the only place we could find to build an airstrip was along a riverbank. There's just so many hills over the only flat land you can find,
Mhm.
and it's all short strips. If you wanted DC-3s would fly the MASH hospital people. Uh, they'd have to sit on the end of the runway and rev the engines until the thing was hopping up and down almost like a rabbit, and then they'd release the brakes because they had to get off the ground in a hurry. We didn't have enough room for it to do that. And we had repair strips all the time. The air support was great in that our guys were so much better than the Russian MiGs and the Chinese and so forth they were flying that we didn't have a whole lot of trouble with that.
Yeah. How much were you getting paid to do this?
When I left, I was making $263 a month.
Well, that's pretty good then, right?
Yeah.
What was your rank?
I went in as second lieutenant, came out of first. But, yeah.
Oh, I see. You're the officer. So
Yeah.
you made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Ah, you're a millionaire
This is
compared to
To some.
private.
One of the interesting things, of course, in a combat zone, you don't get money. You get paid every month. You have to get paid every month, and they have to be able to prove that. But they do it in script. They don't want U.S. cash passed out all over the world.
Mhm.
So they print the script. And the problem is that when you print that, they start counterfeiting. And so periodically, you have to change it. And it's a rapid change. I mean, they'll just announce over the speakers in the camp or something, at 2 o'clock this afternoon, we're changing script. You have 2 hours to turn in what you have for the new script, or else it's bad, you can just go burn it, because it's not going to be worth anything.
Oh my goodness.
And, yeah, and that can come, it's never on a scheduled basis, they just do that. One of the interesting things was when we were at Chunchan building a strip, and they changed script. It had been a little while since they'd done this, and all of a sudden we started seeing women showing up all the way around our compound, which was Babar, with sacks. And come to find out that all of the houses of ill repute where they were taking script, the ladies knew they were fixing to lose all the money they'd been making. And so they were bringing it in and making all kinds of promises to the guys, if you'll turn this in for me. Yeah. But if you turned in, I think a $5 bill was the largest. They had ones and fives. And if you turned in ones, it was okay. You could just exchange them. If you turned anything larger than one, you had to put your name, rank, and serial number on the bill, or you couldn't exchange it. And that way they could tell. And you could come up with a little extra money because everybody was gambling. They played poker and sheet craps and all this stuff, and so you could get, but you couldn't come up with big sums. That just wouldn't work. But that was one of the interesting things that took place, was trying to change the script. But we moved. Actually, I went in at Busan. We worked at Gwangju, we worked at Daegu, we worked at Chunchan, and I ended up in Seoul before I came home, just for building strips for whoever needed them.
Did you ever encounter any difficult or dangerous situations?
We fortunately were not, guerrilla fire was the worst we got, and that was hard to handle because we hired local laborers to get gravel so we could use that. And the way you got the gravel was go into the river bottoms and scrape it up and haul it in buckets and dump it out there. Well, these people worked for us in the daytime, and then we found out on more than one occasion that the gunfire that we were having to be careful about at night was coming from these same people who they knew exactly where we were and what we were doing. And you can't tell the difference. I can't tell the difference between a North Korean and a South Korean. So if the North Koreans infiltrated as civilians, we would know that. We had a group of guys get killed one time. I was going up and I passed these two guys on a horse. That was unusual because there's very few horses over there. And but they looked like just farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, one of the boys that came by our place going to the mail depot to pick up mail said that the night before that these two guys on a horse had ridden up just like two locals to this machine gun emplacement that was protecting the camp where all the guys were bivouacked, and they killed them and then turned these 50 caliber machine guns on the camp and just sprayed the camp. And it was the same two guys, you know, riding this horse. You don't know who they are. And it's tragic, but people would, the ladies, if you see pictures of it, I don't know how they do this, but they'll put a bundle of sticks 6 feet high and
Mm-hmm.
3 feet wide on their head and walk down the road. And occasionally they would have bombs, and they'll be going along there like they're just laboring, and a tank come by, well, they'll politely lay an explosive on it and then dive into the ditch and blow the heck out of the tank. And so there's tragedy in that. If you had that happen to you, especially if some of your buddies were killed by somebody like that, and then you're suspicious of it, somebody's going to end up being accidentally killed that was innocent, because you can't tell which ones have the bombs and which ones don't. And so that's, you know, that's kind of the tough part about it, if you do that. We had a preacher's son that shot a lady right to the front of her head, and she had nothing, but he had been through 2 real close incidents within a very short period of time where they did. And they kept telling her to stop, stay away, stay away, stay away, and she kept coming, so he shot her.
So because she had nothing on her, I mean, did he get in any kind of trouble, or was it because, I mean, she didn't stop, so...
Yeah. No,
maybe-
they put him through the ringer on a hearing, because they want to stop it, you know. You don't want to do that
Yeah.
any more than necessary, but at the same time, I don't know of anybody who would have been over there. Certainly I would have been one of them that said, you know, I'm sorry for her, I'm sorry for her family. But if you just seen 16 people killed by a couple of other people doing the same thing, then I'm voting in his favor. You can't do much about that. But yeah, it's a close, you know, one of the things you run into, it's close-knit. The guys are very cooperative. You find you have to rely on them.
Mhm.
So, you know, and our work was 2 or 3 weeks. We had a monsoon, which I've read about, come through Wanju, and we had 500-pound bombs stacked up out there ready to go, and we had 440-pound drums of asphalt that we're using to pave the runways. And this was coming down a river, enough that in the bend of the river you would get whitecaps. And it was strong enough that it washed that asphalt and these bombs all down the river. Then when our guys go out to dig gravel out of the river, they're a little bit reluctant to throw a big drag grind bucket out there, because he doesn't know if some of those 500-pound bombs are in the bottom of the river.
Oh my gosh.
When they do that. And,
Yeah.
you know, so we found it washed all up and down the mountain. Some you never find.
I mean, was
but
that common when big storms would come through?
the monsoons, yeah, it's pretty common.
Mhm.
We didn't have a drop of rain. It rained, excuse me, it rained north of us, and then, of course, it was all accumulating as it came out of the mountains. But the monsoons are strong, and that's one of the things you contend with that
Mhm.
we didn't have over.
So tell me a little bit about maybe the friendships that you made, or something about the relationships with foreign troops.
We had, for example, and a lot of units do this. We had a young houseboy that we called Slick. We couldn't pronounce his name. But he was just a kid that we thought was an orphan. So we picked him up as kind of a mascot, and he would help out, do errands and things for us on the base. And it was a while finding out about this, but when we got him, we thought he was about 8 years old. He weighed 70 pounds, he was 4 feet tall. And the first 2 weeks we thought we'd killed him. because we were feeding him our food, and it was so rich compared to what he was used to eating that he had diarrhea so bad we thought really we might have ruined him.
Oh my goodness.
But once he got accustomed to our food, he grew 13 inches in 13 months, and he went from 70 pounds to 148 pounds. So.
At 8?
Well, he's not, it turns out he's not 8 years old, he was 15.
Oh my gosh.
But he was so small and everything, that's just what we assumed. But when we started getting our food and, you know, get acclimated to it. And he's good. You run into some things that are kind of comical. I took him to a movie one night, and a part of the show, we put a sheet up in there and set on shell boxes and watch these things. And so I took Slick over there. And one of the things they had was a scene in a restaurant where the guy holds a chair for the lady to sit down. And of course over there, that's a male-dominated society. And so after we got back to our tent, Slick said, what is this? And he goes through the motion of moving the chair and all. And I said, well, he's just being polite, you know. He's helping the lady get her seat. And he sat there for a little bit and thought about that, and then he gets shaking his head, and I said, what's the matter? He said, Lieutenant Johns, no damn good. You don't treat ladies like that. They're supposed to walk 3 feet behind you over there. So
Was he fluent in English, or was he learning?
he was pretty good by the time I left over there.
Yeah, he was getting better.
But yeah, he'd gotten it pretty good. And they're quick to learn, and they like to be a part of it. His older brother, we got to be our cook. And he could make biscuits just like Mom did. I mean, we taught him some things to do that. So, but that's all adjustments that you make, you know, as you go along.
Right.
We were not, my unit, since I was in the Scarway Afton building, so forth, we were not exposed to enemy fire other than guerrilla. You know, at night, you never know who's sneaking around taking a shot, so you get some of that. But I never did really feel that much in danger from it. They steal to survive, and they're extremely good at it. We moved one time, a bivouac area, and the Marines were going to take over what we had, and they call it winterizing tents. You build a wooden floor and a frame and put a tent over it and have a pot-bellied stove. And we told the Marines, said, look, we got ours winterized, and you got new tents. We'll make you an even trade. You just move in and take over our quarters. We'll take your stuff like it was dumped off the ship, and we'll set them up the next time we stop. And so they agreed. We had a barbed wire fence around this airport. We had guards walking our area, and we had guys on with 2 or 3 dogs that patrolled. And we told them, you know, we're going to be pulling out at 6 o'clock. You need to be here. I mean, you need to get your guys over here early and have them on guard, because the people, one way or another, they're going to find out that there's a unit moving. It's supposed to be secret and all that stuff, but they'll learn. And if you don't protect this stuff, they'll steal it and be out of here with it. And they're looking at that barbed wire fence around the place and the dogs and all this and thinking, you guys are just trying to feed us a bunch of stuff. So we told them at 5 o'clock they should be there. They weren't. I sent word. I said, you know, 5:30, you need to get your people up here. And I finally told them, I said, look, at 6 o'clock, I'm pulling my guards and pulling our people, and we're on the trucks with your tents, and we're gone. And they still felt secure. When we pulled out, before they could get up there were enough people came out of this local village, through the fence, over to where these things were, that they stole 2 tents completely, the canvas, the wood, everything. And they got all the tent stuff on the third one. They didn't get a chance to take all the wood before they finally caught up with them. But, you know, they got it over the fence, out of there, and they're gone.
Yeah.
But that's the way they survived.
Yeah.
And one little kid was shining shoes, you know, trying to make a living, and then it started to rain. Well, nobody's going to get their shoes shined when they're walking in the mud, whether they're in town or not. And I saw him leave, go around the building, and I thought, well, he's just giving up. He's not going to make anything today. And then I walked around and looked, and he had his little shoebox there, and he had some rolls of white cloth in it. And so he had his foot up in there, and he's wrapping this foot, and he had him one of these sticks that you see somebody make their homemade
Like a brace.
Brace,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And the next time he appeared, he's walking around with that, you know, like he's got his foot blown off, and instead of shining shoes, he's going to begging because he needed whatever he could get. He's trying to make, and so when it rained, you know, he's ingenious. He just came up with the next best solution, and that is claim you got a bad leg, see what people will give you. But they live in rotten conditions, but they're ingenious.
Mm-hmm.
We had to clear out an area, and I walked in this building. I mean, it's a thatch roof, mud hut, you know. And I walked in there with combat boots on. And it wasn't but just 3 or 4 minutes, and I had to get out of there because my feet were about to burn up. And I asked this guy, and what they do is they tunnel in under these mud huts, and then they stuff green brush and everything and just pack it in,
Mm-hmm.
and they get it to burn so there's no flame, it just kind of sizzles. And that's the way they get their heat, but it's effective because I guarantee you couldn't walk around in there with these combat boots. But whatever it takes to survive, that's, I guess we all try that if we have to, but that's one of the things you really notice with those people.
Yeah.
But their system of justice is severe.
How so?
We laid a 8-inch gas line to an airport from a port, Incheon to Kimpo. And they found out we had to put couplings on there. You know, you lay a length of this pipe, put a coupling on it. The sand under it, the soil was very sandy, and so they would come along and dig a hole out from under one of these couplings and kind of pack the sand in there to make it tight. And then they would loosen the coupling enough that it would drip, and it would fill that hole full of gasoline. This is 115, 145 octane aviation gas. It's hot stuff.
Right.
And then when they got vehicles that run out of gas, they're driving down this road, and we got the pipeline laid over there. They just go over to one of these holes
Kinda
and dip the
refuel.
gas out and put it in their tank.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally, we got a ship sitting in Incheon pumping, and they loosen one of those couplings. Well, now if you got pressure on the line, instead of it dripping, it's going to spew. And if a coupling is too loose, it'll blow it off. And occasionally there'd be a rice paddy full of aviation gasoline because the coupling broke. Well, we kept trying to stop them from doing this, and we weren't having any luck. So we turned it over to the local OSS group, which would be CIA today, but it was the pre. Turned it over to them. They simply took a Jeep with a 30 caliber machine gun and drove down the road. And the first guy they saw messing with one of those couplings, they killed him and left him. And his family tried to come get him, and they won't let them. They wanted him to lay across that pipeline so everybody who had the idea of stealing gas would realize that's what's going to happen. And so it's effective, but it's not something that we wanted to do or would do. You know, we didn't kill them, we ran them off, but their own people, they shot them and left them there. And we had 2 young boys that stole stuff out of, we had a recreational activities building where you could get baseball gloves and stuff like that, the guys. And they were stealing that stuff. And so we did the same thing, turn them over to the local. And they inquired of these guys, and they kept denying everything that came up. And so they got an old May West generator, the kind that you sit in the lifeboat and crank, and it does SOS signals.
Mm-hmm.
They got one of those things, and they asked these guys, and they kept denying everything. So they had one of them, they made him lean against the wall on his fingertips, maybe 4 feet out. And they took the other one and strapped a copper wire to his thumbs and to the generator. And then they started cranking that generator. And the electricity's going through him to where he's literally vibrating on the floor. And they did that for a little bit, and then they said, all right, they asked him again if he had stolen this stuff. Well, to be honest, he still had so much vibration left in him that his mouth was moving, but he couldn't say anything. So they started cranking again. Then the guy who's leaning against the wall, he starts confessing to everything they'd ever asked him. And they just say, no, too late.
Did you witness any of this happen?
The second one, not the first guy. But it happened on the base itself when they did it. But they do.
And who was it conducted by?
The Korean
CIA
OSA.
version, the Korean OSA.
Yeah. And the other thing, it's different there. If I had a regret, I have not a lot of them. The thing that I would like to see our people do when we send folks into combat is a much more in-depth training of who these people are and how you need to treat them. Because too often, if you go in as a defense force, we're over there to take the land back for the Koreans. You kind of go in with an attitude that, if it wasn't for you people, I wouldn't have to be over here at home. I'd be sitting home watching the baseball game, doing something else. And so you kind of come across with this attitude that your country and you're the problem we have to put up with. And if they came here, we wouldn't want somebody coming in and doing that kind of stuff. But if we had better training, I think, to get us prepared so that we know how to deal with people, it'd be a whole lot better. Not the enemy. They do everything, and they do mean stuff and all that. And
You mean just the
so
civilians
whatever
in
you
general?
do, yeah, they deserve what they get. But the people that you are fighting for need a little more respect probably than we give them, I think. But because it's just, they're trying to survive.
Yeah.
And they don't, we could go in with the combat engineers, and when we plant a minefield, we put markers to say, that's mine. If you're dumb enough to go in there, you're probably going to get blown up. But if it comes time to plow the rice paddy, which he and his family have been doing for the last 4,000 years, he doesn't care what the yellow tape is. He's going to get out there, and sometimes it's the women that have to pull the plow, and occasionally, if you're lucky enough, you got an oxen. But they're going to get out there and plow the rice paddies. And, so it's a different life than we'd ever be exposed to. And
So-
most of the guys, I think, are a little like I am. I didn't volunteer. I made it back without it, loss of anything.
Right. Were you weren't wounded at all? Ever?
It was.
Oh, I love you.
In fact, I was really fortunate. Every man in my unit survived. And it was only after I got back in the States that I got word that one of them was killed. But he was killed because he jumped up on the front of a truck trying to hitch a ride, and he fell between it. It wasn't in combat even then, But he's the only one that I personally knew and, worked with over there that was killed. All the rest of them. We were, if you're combating right up in the front, it's 6 points, 6 months, 36 points, you get out of there. If you're hauling ammo, then you get 2 points, and you know. And so our deal was we got 3 points. We had to be there a year to say we had a full combat tour, but we were further back.
So you had to have a total of 36 points to
get out.
Yeah.
And
How long were you in Korea for? Only a year then, or?
I went over there in April and I left in May, so it was just slightly over a year.
What sort of like impact did the war and your experience have on your life after you returned home?
Well, I think I respect people a whole lot more, the life. So far as the work is concerned, you know, what I did in the military was not that much different than what I do in civilian life and working, because you're dealing with people, you got to operate with them. And again, that's not one of those things that you like to see. You don't volunteer for it, but having been there and got back safely and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't give anything for the experience of being there, knowing it.
Sure.
We had, you know, it's kind of funny at times. At Seoul City Air Base, like I say, air support, we didn't have any problems. But we did have this biplane, like you see in stunt shows and stuff, come over and fly right down the middle of our airstrip. And the only thing they had to try to hurt us with were 60 millimeter mortar shells and hand grenades. So there's 2 guys in this plane, and one of them, you know,
Just dropping things out.
throwing stuff out.
Gosh.
But they fly so doggone slow, it's hard for our equipment down. So
Have you been back to Korea at all?
I'm going on the 12th of June.
You doing the revisit program?
This is kind of a different one. There's a church called the New Eden Church, which I understand is Presbyterian, and they've evidently done this before, but they sent 3 tickets to our local chapter, and we drew names, just potluck.
Yeah.
But anyway, the ticket my wife had was the 3rd one drawn, so we get a trip over there for, well, I get the trip. I pay her to go with me, but I'm going to take her. She's disabled. She had a stroke. Her left side paralyzed, but we're going to go together. Go back over.
That'll be exciting. It'll be a good experience.
I-
So this will be your
I think
first time back
It'll be
since.
the first time back.
Yeah.
Last time I was in Seoul, you couldn't go into what would be the subway system because it was all bombed out. My Sunday school class keeps telling me, you know, I've told them that I lost a truck in the Han River because our guys didn't realize that a 50-foot tide in Incheon raises the Han River at Seoul about 10 feet.
You didn't lose any guys though, right?
Yeah. No, there wasn't on there. I lost the truck, but I didn't lose any people.
That's good.
They were in the truck picking up gravel and just didn't realize the sand was getting that wet.
And then just kind of washed
Yeah,
away.
Too far to go. Yeah.
So,
that's it.
what do you think is the legacy carried by the Korean War veterans and the Korean War? What is the legacy?
I think one of the things that most of us are surprised at in a way is the treatment. Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. Those of us who went over there, the Koreans, see, in World War I, as I understand it, the Finnish people paid back the United States for what we spent trying to do that. World War II, nobody. You know, whatever we spent, that's just tough. You know, but the Koreans are extremely appreciative of what was done. And to the extent that I think guys like me who didn't really get shot at on the front line, I sit there and wonder, you know, you don't really have to be that nice to me. I built some airstrips and stuff over there, but I wasn't one of those that was getting up there and getting my head shot at.
Whenever you came back home from Korea, did you speak about your experience?
No.
You didn't talk about it at all?
Somebody asked a question, yeah, I answered. But,
Yeah.
no.
So,
It's just,
um, in your opinion, why do you think the Korean War is often referred to as the Forgotten War? How do you think it got this title?
well, from what I understand, it was basically because not a whole lot, the families who had people over there
Mm-hmm.
knew it was going on, but it wasn't something that was in the papers and had stirred up a lot of people. And then when you came back, as one guy put it, in World War II, you came back to a big celebration. Everybody was involved in that thing, and they would take a death to get it over with. The Vietnam guys come back and get spit on. Most of the Korean guys came back and nobody noticed. And I think that's where they got that term Forgotten War, because, the guys, I got home and some of my high school buddies, that some who'd been over there and some who didn't, and we got together and had fun and talked about that a little bit. But that didn't last 3 months, and we're all out trying to find a way to make a living, do whatever you're going to do. And so, in a way, that's good, because you were allowed to just come back and meld into society and not have any of that. At least you weren't like the Vietnam guys. Yeah. But as far as I know, that's kind of where it was. It was not something that was stirred up, and once it's over, it's over.
So
That's it then.
technically, we're still in a war. When the armistice was signed, it was just a ceasefire.
Yeah.
What do you think we need to do to put a closure on it and to end hostility?
Yeah. I don't think that there will be a closure until there is some way found to put Korea back together,
So you
the
would
North and the South.
So you would support a reunification?
Oh yeah, I really would. Because from what I saw of the people in the South, and then from what I understand is happening in the North, they are so much more deprived even than what we saw, that I think if we were just given a chance, there's tons of things that could be done for those folks up there, and I think that's what they need.
Do you think it's important for younger generations to understand and know the sacrifices and contributions made during the Korean War?
Yeah, but that's particularly shown how we do it. I think you can do that through family relationships, sometimes through church relationships, that kind of thing. But our society is at a point today to where if you just tried to say, we're going to tell you the truth about this, nobody cares. I don't think it'd pay a lot of attention to it, really. It's a shame in a way, because my brother was in World War II. The day he turned 17, he went down and enlisted, and he's gone. And he was 38 months from the time he left until he got to come home for the first time. He didn't even get to come home after boot camp. And so those guys know something about, what you're doing. But today, if the United States were attacked in some way, you'd have a hard time recruiting enough people to, just to do emails. And we're not prepared today. When World War II happened, we converted all the plants making cars to making tanks to making airplanes, and if you believe it, Kaiser was building a ship a day. That's unbelievable to me. But the reason we couldn't do that today is we don't, our economy today is based on paper. And we don't have that kind of stuff.
So would you support for the draft to kind of...
I think one of the best things that could happen is to set up a program, however you want to call it, draft, or for young people to get out of high school and spend a period of time, 18 months, 2 years, something like that, in a military type arrangement before they go off to college. You would be better prepared to say, I think my life is going to be in this direction. That's what I want to do, and that's what I want to focus on. If you'd been exposed to a bunch of other stuff for a couple of years in one of these kinds. And the Swiss do that. Some of the other countries do that. And I think it's a good thing. I think it would have been good for me because I started at 17 to college. And unfortunately, when I started, it was all of the World War II vets returning. We had the largest freshman class in the history of LSU up to that time when I started. But at 17, and I'm competing because they're grading on the curve, I'm competing with guys that are 25 to 35 who are married, got 3 or 4 kids. They have got to get their education GI Bill, and they got to get out and start making a living to either pay off their debts or try to stay out of debt a little bit and raise their families. And that's tough. You start thinking about sitting down in a class next to a guy that's almost twice your age and who's got the responsibility and the experience of a bunch of this stuff. And it's hard to compete. So I think I believe you could reduce that 95% factor where they say 95% of the kids don't know what they're going to do when they go to college. I think you could reduce that down if you had some kind of exposure to life other than what they normally get going through high school. You know, but I didn't. All I knew when I got out of high school was I could sell Saturday Evening Post just as good as anybody else. Or I could sack groceries or, you know, put cans on the shelf in the supermarket, something like that. But you really don't know what you're going to be doing and whether you'd like it or not. So, yeah, I think that a program of some type to give our young folks exposure would be beneficial. I really do. You learn from it.
Well, do you have anything else that you would like to share to preserve your legacy? Any other memories or stories, messages, anything at all?
No, I don't know what it was. What it would be, yeah.
No other stories?
I got all kinds of stuff that I brought back, and I'm not even sure my own grandchildren care. They wouldn't say that.
I bet if they heard your story, they would care.
Well, they might. They might, but
They would.
it's a distant thing, and you know, it's a long time ago.
You said you had.
I am looking forward to this trip because I hope I'm going to review stuff before I go over there, and I hope that will engender some stuff for me when I go. But because I had no bad memories at all about the people, or either military or Korean that I've had. We had good relationships. They worked hard, and you know, you see these folks that they're literally going into a gravel bed for us, and with a sack on their back, and just picking up rocks so that we can make an airport that can try to defend their country. They sacrifice a lot. They really did, and I'm amazed that they are as genuine now in their support and appreciation as they are. They're better than I would be, I'm sure. They really are. They do a good job.
Well, sir, if you have nothing else for me,
That's good.
no? All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to me today. I appreciate it.